So the other day we got this story about the false missile alarm in Hawaii, and I'm not going to share so much gematria in regards to this because I didn't look enough into it, but I just wanted to share some interesting synchronicity things in regards to Hawaii, and I'm pretty sure it's synced up. And while I was writing up this blog post, some really funny stuff happened in regards to Tom Selleck as well. Another synchronicity thing. I want to share that, and if if you go to the description, I'll leave some links called How to Gematria and other links, and you'll understand more of what I'm talking about. But these synchronicity things that happen, I'm telling you, if you understand gematria, which is the practice of coding numbers into words and phrases, it helps you understand more of why these things are happening, and it helps you piece together these odd occurrences or whatever. And, I'm still learning, but I've just noticed that understanding gematria and understanding these synchronicity things, it goes hand in hand. And it's interesting that we got the story about Hawaii because on Thursday night, whatever day that was, the 11th, I talked about at work. I was at work and I work with, a lot of times I work with high school kids at night. And one of them was my cousin Ben. And then his friend, who also works there, came in and was talking or whatever. And they were telling me a story, and they said something about getting locked in the elevator. And I said, or trapped in the elevator. And I said, that actually really happened to some people that I know when I was at the Iowa games when I was in high school. My sister's was on this soccer team called the Illusion Soccer Team. It wasn't ASO and it wasn't high school. It was just some other separate team or whatever. And the one year I went to the Iowa games to watch them play and whatnot, and the ASO or some other kids that were in my class or whatever, they also played soccer there. I don't know how to explain it, but I wasn't part of the team. I just went up there to hang out or whatever. And we went to the Iowa State dorms or whatever in Ames, Iowa, the dorms. And moral of the story, I a bunch of the kids got stuck on an elevator there, and they had to call whatever they were on the elevator for like 2 hours until they got the elevator fixed and whatnot. There's like 15 of them on this elevator. And another thing that I remembered was at that same place, we were on the eighth floor, and me and this other kid named Jake Greenwood opened up the window and we dropped a bunch of cherries on some guy's car. And the guy looked up and saw us, and he came upstairs pissed off as hell, whatever. He told our parents and whatever. We got in trouble for dropping cherries on this guy's car. And, it was just a funny story that I had remembered. And I brought this story up to these kids I work with. The very next night at work, that guy came in to where I work and ordered pizzas. He was in town, I guess, for a Christmas thing for this family and whatnot. I swear I haven't seen this kid in probably 10 years or more. I have not talked to him, anything. And he comes in the store the very next day after I just told the story about him. And I even asked him, I said, "You remember the cherry story or whatever?" I told him, "It's crazy because just last night I was telling that story about me and you dropping the cherries off the eighth floor or whatever." And he started laughing. He was like, "Yeah, whatever, blah, blah, blah." And then he got his pizzas, went to his mom and dad's or whatever. And so just strange that I would talk about this guy. The next day, I see him for the first time in 10 years. But what sticks out to me is that the only other memory I really have with this guy is on this same soccer team. They went and played a tournament in Hawaii, and a bunch of the families just basically made a trip out of it. So when I was 20 years old, I went to Hawaii, and we went to watch them play soccer, but we made a vacation out of it, basically. And just interesting that, the only memories I have are dropping the cherries at the Iowa games and whatnot, and also going to Hawaii with this person. And then 2 days later, we get a story about Hawaii, a big old story about Hawaii. And on Friday night, what he told me is that he lives in Carroll, Iowa now. And Carroll, about an hour away from where I live. He told me he lives in Carroll, Iowa. And the only person that I know currently that lives in Hawaii, her last name, her married name, is Carroll. Jessica Carroll. So how interesting, you know? This guy lives in Carroll. I have a big memory with him in Hawaii. The only person I know that lives in Hawaii, their last name is Carroll. And so I documented all of this stuff, and I even talked about how, you know, the only other person that have ever known that lived in Hawaii was my friend Drew. And I guess according to Jake, Drew doesn't live in Hawaii anymore. He lives by Jake's brother somewhere in Oregon or Idaho. I can't remember what he said, but he doesn't live in Hawaii anymore. And Drew is another reason that the story in The Drop of the Cherries sticks out, because Drew overdosed on no dose and at that same Iowa games. And I'm pretty sure that he had to go to the hospital and get his stomach pumped and whatever else. He took like a whole bottle of no dose. And I remember he was crazy, hopped up on caffeine or whatever no dose truly are. You know, he was just crazy or whatever, like methed out pretty much. And so it's just strange. That memory of the Iowa games, it even connects to a guy I knew in Hawaii, or that had lived in Hawaii, and now he doesn't live in Hawaii. And his grandpa, Drew's grandpa, just died on October 3rd this year, that I made a blog post on, because his grandpa was the guy who owns the bank uptown. And then he died. One of the banks, there's two now, I guess. But his grandpa owned the bank, and you know, he died 53 days after his birthday. His name equaled 53. The bank he owned equals 53. The word bank equals 53. And a whole bunch of other stuff. But I documented that Hawaii equals 261 in Satanic. The word banker equals 261 in Satanic. And I even talked about him dying on 10-3 being interesting because, you know, stock market crash equals 103. He's the guy who owns the bank in town. And the Super Bowl is 103 days after the World Series began, that began on the anniversary of Black Thursday, which is when the stock market crash really started to begin or whatever, right? So 103 days before. Super Bowl 51 was also 261 days before the World Series began this year. Hopefully that makes sense, but there's something synced up to it. And this guy being a banker, the Super Bowl played at US Bank Stadium, you know. But anyway, Banker 261, Hawaii 261, and it's super fitting. A while back I also documented North Korean missile equals 261. Just recently I've documented how there's something connected to Family Guy season 4, and Family Guy season 4 equals 261. I've had all these synchronicities with season 4. I'm seeing all this stuff with season 4. And it's funny because 261 is a number I've talked about how I don't really know what it means, but I keep seeing it over and over, you know. I talked about my band who played a show at the Down Under Lounge that equals 261, and my drummer's name equaled 261. It was on the 261st day of the year. I went to Wendy's that day, and my order was $2.61. Just this number, I don't quite understand the purpose of it, what it means, you know. So interesting, you know. And Hawaii is also the 50th state. Lately, I've been talking about 50 a ton. Pink equals 50. Stand By Me equals 50. Will Wheaton equals 50. Steelers equal 50. Pittsburgh equals 50. You know, just lots of stuff with the number 50 and how it's synced up to the Super Bowl this year. Everything I was talking about 2015 with the Eagles and bridge collapsing, and Minnesota with the bridge collapse in 2007, but that was before Super Bowl 50. So I wondered if there was something connected to Hawaii in regards to The Simpsons or Family Guy, because they've both been really significant. Last year, the Family Guy and The Simpsons were showing me the Super Bowl. It was synced up to the death of my uncle, and season 10, episode 12 of The Simpsons aired the same day the Falcons lost in the Super Bowl to the Denver Broncos and whatnot. But that was also the same day the very first ever episode of Family Guy aired, that begins with a Brady Bunch skit or whatever, right? Then Tom Brady wins the Super Bowl. Tom Brady, we had the death of Florence Henderson last year, the mom on the Brady Bunch dying. Tom Brady also won Super Bowl 49 after Alice on the Brady Bunch died, synced up to the Brady Bunch. Brady Bunch equals 98 in Gematria. Tom Brady equals 98 in Gematria. New England Patriots equal 98 in Gematria. He became the starter at Michigan in the year 98. You know, Michigan Wolverines, I believe, equal 98 in Gematria. Super synced up to the number 98. Even had the Brady Bunch Snickers commercial in Super Bowl 49. Snickers equals 98 in Gematria. This year is the 98th season of the NFL. But anyway, I just typed in Hawaii in regards to Family Guy and whatnot, and it only a few things come up. And one of them was about Magnum PI that is held or set in Hawaii. And if you look it up, they talk about Magnum PI being parodied in the Misery segment of Three Kings. Three Kings is the episode that also starts off with the Stand By Me segment. And I'll leave a link to my playlist of Stand By Me stuff. But I talked about how I thought there's something going on with Stand By Me by following the media stories, and the only people that weren't in it were Will Wheaton, Kiefer Sutherland, and then just a couple days later we got the Sutherland Springs church shooting, and then an article about Will Wheaton saying that if people prayed and they still died, so praying didn't do any good or whatever. And Will Wheaton was also out of nowhere on the newest Big Bang Theory, and he hadn't been on the Big Bang Theory for over a season. So, just interesting. They mentioned Magnum PI with Tom Selleck or whatever in this episode of Stand By Me with Family Guy. And I looked up Tom Selleck, and I saw that it said he's also famous for the Rockford Files, and that's famous for James Garner. James Garner in the movie Space Cowboy. All of the Stand By Me stuff, I know it's confusing, but all of the Stand By Me stuff, I said, there's something going on with the cowboy theme. I don't think it's for the Cowboys in the Super Bowl. It's connected to next year's World Series. But I keep seeing this cowboy stuff, and last year, the big stuff was the space stuff. And then we got the Houston Astros in the World Series. So, Space Cowboy, whatever else. And I even noticed that Tom Selleck, it said he did a whole bunch of cowboy films because of whatever. He was an avid outdoorsman, blah, blah, blah. These interests led him to leading man cowboy roles in Western films or whatever, right? So he was even in a whole bunch of cowboy films. And Kiefer Sutherland was important because he's in the movie Young Guns and whatever else. His dad's in the movie Space Cowboy, Donald Sutherland. So hopefully that makes sense as well. But also at that Iowa games that year where we dropped the cherries, I specifically remember listening to Kid Rock a whole bunch. All of them girls really liked Kid Rock, and Kid Rock was really popular. I even kind of liked Kid Rock at the time. And Kid Rock has the song Cowboy or whatever. Kid Rock, I've been having synchronicity with, that I've shown in other videos as well. He's super synced up to the flag. He's synced up to the death of Charles Manson. Charles Manson synced up to the kneeling stuff that involves the flag. He believed the blacks were going to rise up, and it was all because of the Beatles song Blackbird. That's why we had the Falcons in the Super Bowl last year. A bunch of other stuff. I'll check out some links in the description, but super synced up. So interesting. I would remember that song, Kid Rock, the Devil Without a Cause album, at that Iowa games as well. Kid Rock with the song Cowboy. We also listened to Buck Cherry a lot with the song Lit Up or whatever. I'm on a plane with cocaine or whatever. And just interesting in regards to dropping cherries. I never even put that together, you know. Buck, cherry, and then we were dropping. The whole memory is all about dropping cherries on this car and whatnot. And I also pointed out that NASA's full name, National Aeronautics and Space Administration, equals 261 in Gematria. And earlier this year, we got a story about Hawaii. Can't remember what the town was. It started with an H, not Honolulu. But that town supposedly discovered the first object that comes from another solar system or whatever. So once again, the space theme, you know, synced up to Hawaii, and I don't know, this 261 NASA connected to Hawaii as well. So anyway, as I'm writing up this blog post, you know, I just mentioned Tom Selleck. I wonder if there's anything going on with Tom Selleck in this blog post. Hadn't, you know, just writing it up. And sometimes when I'm making a blog post, I'll just randomly, for whatever reason, I just need to think, and I'll kind of look up and just think, you know, just what is the connection or this or that, you know, just to clear my mind a bit from not staring at the computer. This night, I randomly looked up at the TV, and the first thing I saw was Tom Selleck on the TV. No lie, Tom Selleck was on the TV right after I just made this all the stuff about Tom Selleck. And the first thing that I heard, and the first thing that Tom Selleck says on this TV show, he walks up to this lady and he says, "Carol." What are the odds of that, you know? We're just talking about how, you know, the guy I know from a long time ago told me he just moved to Carroll, Iowa. The only person I know that currently lives in Hawaii, her last name is Carol. Then I document about Tom Selleck. I look up at the TV Tom Selleck's on, and the first thing he says is the word Carol. And I'm going to play the clip here just so you can see what I'm talking about. You know? What are the odds of that? I'm posting about Carol and Tom Selleck, and I look at the TV and Tom Selleck's on it, and then he walks over to this lady, and he says, "Carol, what are the odds?" I was actually gonna play this whole clip, but I hit the wrong stop button over here. I stopped my screen or whatever. But when we'll pull it back up. When I looked up, I pushed the guide or whatever, and it said it was on the TV show Elementary or whatever. But it's totally not the TV show Elementary. It is the TV show Blue Bloods, and I don't know if my DVR was like just a tiny bit behind, or it. I was watching the Patriots game a little bit before that, so it had to be on the same channel, I believe. It was on Channel 3, KMTV or whatever. So I don't know. Just interesting that it said it was on the TV show Elementary, but it was actually on this episode of Blue Bloods called Personal Business, Season 7, Episode 8. So, you know, I don't really know the significance of that, but, you know, just interesting. That's the type of stuff that happens to me all day, every day, you know? The odds of me looking up there and just writing about Tom Selleck and then randomly stopping and looking up to think, and I see the TV has Tom Selleck on it, and he walks up to the first thing he does is walk up and say Carol to some lady after. I mean, it's just craziness. I don't know how it's being done or what, you know, but blows my mind every single time. So anyway, somewhere in the mix of all of writing this blog post too, I saw that Zach had a post on his blog about troll spreading information going by the name Peter Griffin, right? It's connected to Family Guy and whatnot. And I don't know what he wrote on here, but yeah, he wrote stuff about the Eagles or something. And I just commented not only did Family Guy premiere that day, it was after The Simpsons season 12, 10 episode 12. And if you watch the Falcons game, Falcons versus the Eagles this year, the score was 10-12 for a good amount of time before the Eagles won. And they even kicked that field goal to make it 10-15 in the third quarter with 16 seconds left. 316, that's the super stuff that's connected to Kid Rock and connected to the death of Charles Manson and just Charles Manson in general. Jesus Christ equals 316 in Hebrew. Think about John 3:16. Think about Tim Tebow, the original kneeler in his 3:16 game against the Steelers. You know, so just interesting. But I also pointed out that in the very first episode of Family Guy, there's a gag about uh, Peter getting drunk watching the movie Philadelphia in the movie theater. And the movie Philadelphia super synced up to the year 2015 that I was documenting about, which was Philadelphia's 333rd year of, being founded. Philadelphia Eagles equal 333 in Jewish gematria. Tom Selleck equals 333 in Jewish gematria. Just think about Tom Selleck. Philadelphia stars Tom Hanks, Tom Brady, the whole twin theme that I was talking about. Thomas means twins, right? So it would be fitting for Tom Brady, Thomas, to play in the Twin Cities. Also, I just read in here, I can't believe I didn't think about looking up Michael Vick when the Eagles played the Falcons. I know I talked about it a long time before that, and then I didn't even put it together when the Falcons and the Eagles were playing. Michael Vick, the Falcon, got the dog fighting, and then he went to the Eagles. So, just interesting. Possibly I'll look more into that later, but also in this episode, I think I looked up Philadelphia in regards to Family Guy then after that because of all the Philadelphia stuff here. And, they mentioned that Philadelphia stuff with the first episode, but they also mentioned the film Philadelphia in season 5, episode 2, called Mother Tucker. And season 5, episode 2, how interesting. Minnesota equals 52, Super Bowl 52. They mentioned Philadelphia in that episode. And it's even about Tom Tucker and not spending enough time with his son Jake, right? Tom, and then Jake was what started this whole post of synchronicity with Hawaii with me and whatever else. So I don't know. I'm documenting stuff, telling you there's the synchronicity things. They give you clues if you understand gematria. You see how it's all synced together. But it's not all just gematria. It's it's synced up to themes and whatever else. Key buzzwords like Carol, Thomas, and if you know that Thomas means twins, which I found out later on, after all the twin symbolism and whatnot, the doubting Thomas, which is interesting because I don't even know. It's just interesting because, I've doubted myself a lot of times on some of these things that I'm thinking about, and then it ends up happening or whatever. So, I don't know. One last thing, I guess, in regards to Space Cowboy, and then I'm going to end the video. Just figured I'd add this in here, but I noticed that the only time that the Super Bowl was played in Jacksonville was the Super Bowl where the Patriots played the Eagles. And what's interesting is last year I documented about an episode of The Simpsons called Homer and Ned's Hail Mary Pass. And that aired on the same day, 2/6/2005. It aired on the same day that the Patriots beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl. And in that episode, Homer is like doing these dances or whatever, and the players come and want him to do the end zone dances for him. So then they choose him to be the guy who puts on the halftime show, and he doesn't know what to do. So he has Ned Flanders help him out or whatever. And Ned Flanders does a whole religious thing in regards to Noah and the flood, right? And then we just had the Houston floods and whatever else. Then the Astros, win the World Series. The Houston Astros win the World Series. Flood and everything else synced up to the number 52. Now we're in Super Bowl 52. But on this episode, they shoot fireworks up in the sky, and it has the cowboy hat. And last year, I documented how it reminds me of a space cowboy, right? So just interesting in regards to space cowboy. Also, at that Super Bowl, they had the Beetle, or this. Yeah, I can't remember. Hold on. Yeah, they had the Beatle, Paul McCartney, sing the halftime show because this was the year after Justin Timberlake showed uh, Janet Jackson's boob and whatnot. So Paul McCartney, the Beatle, was the one who did the halftime show at this Super Bowl. And once again, the Beatles are super significant to Charles Manson and the kneeling stuff, so who knows? Wouldn't surprise me if we see the Eagles and the Patriots, but, you know, it seems like I'm always wrong, so. Also, in regards to the flag, then, that same year, Kid Rock also performed in that halftime show, and he had controversy about wearing a flag outfit, and people were saying he desecrated the flag, right? And remember, he said, fuck Colin Kaepernick last year or whatever. Kid Rock, super important to all this kneeling and flag symbolism. It all goes back to Colin Kaepernick, so. And then he has the song Cowboy, Space Cowboy. So I figured I'd look up the movie Space Cowboy again. And something I never noticed before, because I didn't see all of the bridge symbolism last year. Space Cowboy came out on 8/1 of 2000. Remember the Minnesota bridge collapse happened on August 1st? It fell 81 feet, right? Pittsburgh Steelers equal 81. They're the city of bridges. Also, Golden Gate Bridge equals 81 in Gematria. This year, 2018, will be the 81st anniversary of it being open. Just so much going on with it. I just made a video about the song Blind by Korn that came out on 8/1. And Coolio was leading me to it. Coolio born on 8/1. Tons of stuff. The backwards R in Korn. R is the 18th letter. Backwards is 81. But Space Cowboy also super interesting because it's, directed, produced, and it also stars Clint Eastwood, Kiefer Sutherland's dad, but Clint Eastwood, super duper fitting to a bunch of stuff that I just discovered 2 or 3 nights ago by reading through some of my comments and whatnot. There's stuff that's synced up to Back to the Future as well. The train in Back to the Future is train number 131. Remember, Super Bowl equals 131. And his name's Clint Eastwood when he goes back to the Wild West, right? The cowboy theme yet again, the Wild West. And he says his name's Clint Eastwood, and it's supposed to be Clayton Ravine, but since he dies and not Clara Clayton or whatever, they call it Eastwood Ravine. And when he comes back to the future to 1985, he's on the train and he goes across the red bridge that looks like the Golden Gate Bridge. And we've had a lot of stuff in regards to train symbolism. We even had a train wreck today I haven't even looked into yet. But the movie Stand By Me that I was talking about that's so important, Stand By Me really has the big scene that with the train bridge, and we had the train, the Amtrak that derailed over the overpass, like the train bridge in Washington, DuPont, Washington. DuPont means from the bridge or whatever. Lots of stuff with bridge symbolism. And Clint Eastwood is also famous for the movie The Bridges of Madison County, right? Bridges of Madison County. He's in Space Cowboy. He produced, and directed it. There's something with bridges. It's so important. And the Super Bowl important to the bridge stuff. But what I pointed out was that I went back and looked at some of my stuff in regards to the Eagles because in 2015 we got all kinds of stuff with the death of the Eagles. The Eagles of death metal were at the Paris attacks, then we had the death of Glenn Fry, and then we had the death of Randy Meisner's wife or whatever, and then I can't remember. Don Henley said the Eagles were dead or something. I can't remember it all. It was all super synced up to the Philadelphia Eagles or Philadelphia like crazy. Carson Wentz, even I made a post just the other day about Carson Wentz and his dog named Henley, Mama Henley, right? Reminding us of Don Henley and the Eagles. And I mean, he's not even from there, so it doesn't. The dog's 5 years old, so why was his dog named Henley? Mama Henley, synced up to the Eagles, the band. But I posted about Steve Miller Band, and they had the song "Fly Like an Eagle." And then they also have the song, Some People Call Me Space Cowboy, right? Whatever, the Joker. So, once again, some Eagles connections. But in that post, I talked about the Golden Gate Bridge in the movie Herbie the Love Bug. And Lindsay Lohan's wearing the shirt with the blood moon on it with the Golden Gate Bridge, right? And all of that, the 923 stuff that was super synced up to Pope Francis, right? It was important to Philadelphia. That's when the last place Pope Francis visited. And then, as on the Jesuit anniversary, then Pope Francis left, and we got the final blood moon of the Tetrad. This year, on January 31st, we're getting the first blood moon since then, right? And all of the 923 stuff is significant to Donald Trump. That was the day that we got the story in the mainstream media about Donald Trump calling out the people kneeling in the NFL. It's connected to the flag stuff. The flag supposedly sewn in Philadelphia. But also 923 is the day that Drew Bledsoe got injured and Tom Brady came in the game. And then that's basically when Tom Brady got his big break or whatever. It was on 923. So I wish I would have thought of that before. But, who cares? So I guess no true purpose in this video. Just wanted to share some synchronicity stories, how I believe that they're synced up to, some events, interesting numbers going on with it. The Space Cowboy theme seems really important. The space and the cowboy. I don't know. So, I'm going to end the video there. You can always come to my blog too. You know, I blog about stuff all of the time, trying to piece these puzzles together and whatnot. So I'll leave a link to my blog in the description as well. You can come read a bunch of stuff that I talk about because every single day I talk about these synchronicity things that are going on and, you know, what I'm possibly supposed to be seeing with them. Sometimes it's absolutely I figure it out. Other times I don't. So sometimes I don't figure it out for a year or so. And then it all makes perfect sense. So whatever. Have a good one. I'm done rambling. Peace.